Hey guys, what's up? It's Cuffer here. I just kind of wanted to make a video about some of the missing archetypes in old school RuneScape and how that could tie in with future reward space. Earlier this year, there was a lot of discussion about how the old school RuneScape team kind of feels limited by their current rewards, and I just think that they're not utilizing the mechanics that are already in the game. So I wanted to make a video going over some of the different archetypes that I feel like could be introduced in the game. So a quick note, I made this as a PowerPoint because I work as a software engineer. Most of the time when I need to communicate stuff to my coworkers, I use a PowerPoint. So that's why I decided to go with this style. I am not, a video editor or anything like this. I'm just doing this for fun. So yeah. So why do we need to introduce these classic archetypes? Well, most of these archetypes already exist in the game in some fashion, and I'll reference them for each slide if it's not already obvious. But these concepts provide additional reward space and diversity to combat without changing the core mechanics that we know and love. The goal is to enhance the existing combat and increase the skill ceiling, but this also comes with a path to upgrade to improve your strength for that archetype. The restrictions I followed when creating these were I just wanted to choose stuff that I thought made sense. No space lasers, guns, or modern age technology. This is all fantasy, medieval times esque concepts. And I want to be clear, this is not evolution of combat. This is not related to raids for rewards. These are concepts that I'm suggesting for the next 5 to 10 years to be implemented slowly for one release in every boss or something like that. It's just a new niche to be filled. And this is also not restricted roles or classes. It's just gear and then a theme behind the gear. All right, starting off, we have Barbarian combat. It's going to be mixed combat styles. It doesn't make sense to me that right now we have three options: punch, kick, and block, and they're all crush. It is the perfect opportunity to have the basic stab slash crush tools, so that way a new player can get an understanding, even at a very, very fundamental level, that hey, there are these three different defensive styles. So Auto the Barbarian will teach you how to use the punch, which becomes a stab, a chop, which becomes a slash, attack styles. And this will allow you to teach defensive weaknesses through some sort of brawl minigame where you can only defeat the NPCs by using the correct combat style. This will teach low levels about the different combat styles, but also solidifies unarmed combat as a real combat style. Obviously, unarmed combat is the first combat style available to the player, but it's never built upon beyond some niche boss mechanics. I think also when the Easterlands come out, they could provide new unarmed combat styles or attack animations or something like that. So what would this Barbarian combat gear look like? Well, currently in max gear, you can attain 56 strength bonus or around a 35 max hit every 4 ticks with no gloves or weapons. I specify no gloves because of the gear that I'm going to suggest. So starting with wraps, this would be early level obtained through the Barbarian training, possibly as a reward from the minigame. This would just increase your base attack speed by 1 tick, giving you 3 tick unarmed attacks. This would be, the base of all of your unarmed attacks from now on. There would be the lead-weighted anklets, which you'd unlock at level 50. This increases your strength bonus by 12 when you're kicking. This would increase your max hit to around 41 when wearing ferocious gloves if you had max gear. I put these numbers here because, I want to give some idea of balance, but I really did not take into consideration really PvP or like balance that much. It's mostly just ideas to get the blood flowing, So next is the Ket Talk, and then I have a picture here showing it. It's basically boxing gloves that I colored brown to look like rock. It means blunt rock in the Tazar language. So this would be like a end of mid-game gear that changes your gives you basically your crush attacks back that you have currently, but then it could also increase those 2 style strength by 30, increasing your hit to around 44 in max gear, giving an alternative to existing crush bonus weapons. Then there's also the rune. Oh, also these obviously you're losing accuracy because you don't have a weapon, so that is another thing to consider. As I was alluding to earlier, I don't really want any of this to be best in slot. This is more so just concepts to build upon. So rune powered gloves. This would be kind of like a raids reward weapon. It would split magic damage and physical damage when you attack, and you could charge it with runes or possibly something like the new motes from Raids 4, which could imbue them with elemental weakness and increase your strength by like 38, which would increase your max hit to around a 46 plus whatever elemental damage you do. Alright, the next archetype is thieving. So in the Leviathan fight, we see that the game can determine if you're attacking an NPC from behind. We could leverage that to do something like additional flat damage when attacking from behind based on thieving and combat levels. Some gear that could go along with this would be something like Stranger's Gloves, which you could provide in early access to gloves equal to Ferocious Gloves in strength, but it would only apply that strength when using a dagger weapon. And then when attacking from behind and using a dagger, it would also increase your minimum hit to 5 in teaching newer players like, oh, you have this bonus attack if you hit an opponent from behind. The next suggestion is the Shadow Realm Cloak. This will provide 5 ticks of invisibility where you could reposition around a boss. Basically, it would just de-aggro you from a boss and, render self. And then the final suggestion here would be the Marauder Helm. This would increase your accuracy and damage by like 10% when attacking from behind. Similar to like a Slayer Helm, but on everything. You just have to attack it from behind. So I feel like that's a nice alternative. Maybe you want to kill a Slayer monster and you just start attacking it from behind, Maybe you freeze it. I don't know how that would work, but it would be interesting to see. So the next suggestion is a rework to Poison and Herblore. Currently, Poison Plus, and Poison Plus all just apply once to a weapon. I'm not talking about, darts or arrows. I'm talking about like daggers and stuff and spears. And you just apply it once and that's it. You never apply it again. And this makes poisons extremely low value because you would have no reason to ever use them again. And B, it makes them limit how powerful they can be because you could just poison something and then forget about it. There's just no mechanics behind it. You poison, attack, you wait till they get hit with the poison, and then you're good. I think they should rework poison so that way you can apply it to the weapon. It gives the weapon 1,000 charge, stack however, put 10,000 poison pluses on there. You have, 1,000,000 charges or whatever you want. I don't care. But it should be a charge system. There should be some way to use your poison pluses beyond, arrows that never do anything anyways. So poison damage should start at 1 and stack on hit. So every single hit, it will have some sort of effect. This can either be increasing the damage done or the rate that the poison damage is applied. And then also just let more bosses get poisoned. I mean, I get why Venom is kind of like BS or toxic or whatever, but right now, nothing can even be poisoned. It's just kind of a dead mechanic. It would be interesting to see, and we've seen them implement, not intentionally, but there are existing ways to rid NPCs of poison. You see the cow moo and then it doesn't get poisoned. You see the chicken lay an egg and it doesn't get poisoned. That could be something similar that is implemented for bosses so you can poison them for like a brief period of time. And it's not something that's permanent, like they're probably afraid of. Okay, so some weapons or gear that I would like to see come out to kind of help this identity would be An irradiated root, it would be an offhand weapon that has a chance to increase your opponent's poison stack by 1 when hit by a melee attack. The contagion waders, which would be a single piece item, but it's worn in the chest and leg slot at the same time. And this would irradiate poison in a 3x3 area around you, applying a stack every 12 ticks. And then finally, Vile Cloak. This would leave a trail of poison on the ground behind you, similar to Doom and Zebek, but it would provide you also with flat armor against poison damage. So, and you could charge it with poison plus. So I think that these are sort of unique opportunities to implement the identity of poisoning. So the next concept is Holy Prayer. Prayer scrolls could be unlocked that could provide powerful chant-based attacks that could deal unholy damage or provide some sort of unique effect to enemies. Currently, you can perform god chant-specific chants, with god books, but it doesn't do anything. You could do something like chants like By Saradomin's Light or Law and Order or Meat's Back on the Menu, boys. And this could provide different effects, like blinding an enemy or turning an enemy into meat or resummoning an enemy as a thrall. I think that these could be unique implementations of the prayer skill beyond just, oh, you have the prayer book, all it does is protect you. Some other ideas, or some gear ideas, are you could get a scrap of the Edicts of Guthix. Maybe this could be a raid's reward. I mean, originally that's how I was talking about it with my friends and stuff, but so this would be like, you say balance in all things over 4 ticks, and then you do like a bunch of damage, but it would, I mean, similar to what the proposed reward was, it would average out between 20 and 50 because it would have an increased maximum or minimum hit and a decreased max hit, and it could scale based on like your prayer bonus or something like that. And then I suggested Frenesque Guardian Plate Armor. This would be a hybrid set, but for every X prayer point lost while wearing the armor, your physical damage and accuracy could be increased by Y%. This could be an alternative to, the gear that they proposed. It was just flat out, hey, you get some magic bonus, you get some physical damage bonus, and there you go. And also you get a fuck ton of prayer. But potentially you could have something with maybe negative prayer bonus, and that could be what you use to add a negative to the armor itself. So here's the scrap of Edicts of Guthix. You can see they just say balance in all things, and then like green flames erupt from the boss. And yeah, that's just a quick little glimpse of what I was thinking. It would, be balanced in all things, quite literally, with the attack bonuses. Okay, so next is the Frenesque Plate Armor. This would benefit long combat scenarios. It would be best at combat that starts at mage and then ramps up to melee, like Ohm, for example. So this would start out with 0 strength and 0 strength bonus, basically, but it would have negative prayer bonus too. And then for every expert, like I just said, every X prayer point lost, you would increase the amount of melee damage and accuracy done per piece worn. Giving existing fire weapons such as salamanders and fire arrows a burn effect could apply to the firemaking skill. I think some gear that could be added to the game could be something like the oil pot, an oil pot, which you throw a pot of oil on the ground, light on fire with an oil attack, and it will apply burn in an AoE. Maybe you drop it too. And then a Molotov cocktail. This could be something where you throw a burning bottle of alcohol and it explodes, similar to an AoE like the Crazy Archaeologist attack. Now how he throws the books and they all explode. You just like one of those, and maybe it applies a burn damage. And then maybe a super salamander that acts as like a flamethrower where it attacks 10 times in 10 ticks, once every tick, but then you need to put it back in your inventory for it to be charged over the next 30 ticks or something like that. Our next idea could be some sort of summoning capabilities that enhances our existing thralls basically to last for a longer period of time and follow you through instances. So my idea is something like you could have a chromium idol, something where you just keep it in your inventory and you click on it, and then you'd have some sort of reagent. This could be something like imp in a box, which would end up using a ballista, a clockwork cat, which could turn into a clockwork panther, or mithril siege, which could grow into a magic flower guardian. Another option could be summoning magical plate armor to fight with us, similar to the plate armor found in the Warriors Guild. We can summon that there. Why can't we summon that in our own combat scenarios? The next archetype would be introducing the tank or defensive role. This is completely underutilized out in OSRS outside of the God Wars dungeon at some points. Some changes that really could fix this would be changing the set bonus of Justicar to be -3 flat damage instead of, or just plus flat HP, which could still cap at 121. This could offset the, flat damage that you're taking from the chip damage that you're taking from bosses. You could get a Din's Bulwark buff that lets the Din's Bulwark intercept or reduce damage of projectiles. If it's not targeted at you, it could be targeted at someone behind you, and you get between the boss and the target and block the projectile with your Dins. We could also get a spec weapon that acts as a goading potion temporarily and boosts your defensive stats but reduces your offensive stats. Maybe this also comes with a change to goading potions to make it have a greater effect on bosses and aggressive mobs and not just passive mobs. And then finally, they could upgrade the Dragon Tortoise Shell to be a best in slot defensive shield. Currently, right now, the Tortoise Shield Shell, whatever, cape slot thing, it's kind of mid. It just has a lot of weight on it. Give it some purpose. Give it a bunch of defense and throw it on your back, Following tank, we have the traps or hunter archetype. This could be, spike traps or integrated with the firemaking, oil traps that you can light on fire, or integrated with poison traps that could all be connected to the hunter skill, requiring smart placement to effectively use the traps. You could also possibly release hunter creatures, which would target the nearest opponent. Maybe you release an imp in the box and it just goes running straight at a boss, or you release a chimchampa and it just explodes at your feet, rather than having to throw it. And then bushes could be placed around the world, as we saw with the stimfight hunter method in Blood Moon Rises. It's super cool. What if there was just bushes all around in Catacombs of Corinth, and when you're out of combat, you could go in a bush and you come out of the bush and get a guaranteed max hit or something like that. I think that there's a lot of just cool stylistic enrichments that could be made to make the world feel more alive, really. So that's what these changes do. If I wanted to go out and grab a bag of snakes and release it on an enemy, I'm not saying that would be good, strong or anything, but I think it would be fun. And what's the point of a game if you're not trying to have fun? So I really hope that that's getting across in these ideas, that it's just about having some fun, really. After Hunter, we have crude machinery or engineering. This would use the construction skill. So machines of war have been developed in the Middle Ages, would fit perfectly as complex weaponry, and we see them existing from previous ages. This could be something like Greek fire, where you can put a poison splat on the ground, but it would be a fire tile that burns enemies. You could have a barricade, which could block off a certain tile from movement. You could have a stationary ballista, which could be set up in a boss room similar to a dwarf cannon, but the character needs to operate the ballista, meaning that you'd need a tank roll to provide cover for that character since they can't move. There could also be something like a wooden or spiritual or runic power armored exosuit, which could be in some sort of gauntlet-esque fight where you create your mech and then you go into the fights. Just similar to Gauntlet, it would just be, instead of you putting on crystal gear, you just build like a little wooden robot thing that you climb into, and you like use the weapons that you get. I just think that it could provide, you know, cool, bigger weapons. Maybe it makes your ballista shoot a lot faster, because as a bigger character, it's easier for you to pull back a crossbow. That's, you know, it would be more like a crossbow than a ballista if you were that big. So that's why I'm kind of just suggesting these ideas. The Bard skill was a pitch made by Caveman Only, Gentle Tractor, and Screepmonge before Sailing ever came out. This was when people were talking about adding a new skill. But I think that there's a lot of applications which this could be a new role in PVM. What we see with the Soulflame Horn is a great example, where it could be instruments that have AoE utility items. Someone playing the drums consistently could be lowering the monster's defense while the drums are being played. Playing the flute could deal a small amount of damage in the large AoE. Or playing a lute could increase the attack speed of nearby players. These pitches could offer new roles and skill expression. I wanted to put this in just so that way I show that I'm not completely biased with the things I'm showing. Next is crit chants. So this does exist in RuneScape 3, but it's essentially just additional RNG to do a critical hit on top of the damage that you're already doing. And I just don't think that this really has a place in old school RuneScape. We already have enchanted ruby bolts as a critical chance somewhat, and they have a lot of problems. It's just something that I don't think could be balanced easily, but I'm not completely biased. You know, I still wanted to share a potential idea, and maybe that there's a discussion to be had behind it. Concentration magic, like the ZMI Initiate who sits in the abyss holding that portal open, could be a new role for multi-way combat instances, where one player has to cast a concentration spell, and unless they are damaged or interrupted, they'll be able to cast it. These concentrations could be something like an AoE protection prayer for your allies, a large explosion like we saw with the word fight in Blood Moon Rises, where it was that large burst from him, minor healing over time in an AoE, or maybe even a targeted beam spell that pierces through an opponent. I wasn't able to find a like laser beam, so I just put a beam of wood there, but it would be like, you know, blast through multiple targets. It's basically like the Raids 4 reward suggestion, but a spell. So tying in with concentration, kind of buffing and debuffing enemies, we have buff, debuff, and healing. Hit points related, you know, integration. The TOA Mega Rare was, yes, a bad proposal, but some of the effects of the Lunar spellbook I thought were quite interesting. Healing and buffing is a unique niche that a lot of people really do enjoy. Think of like cleric or support roles in video games. I personally loved playing cleric in Dark and Darker. It was like my main role. This could also be the foundation of the Bard pitch as well. The Scepter of the Moon could be an item that's auto-cast, that's charged. It's a charged staff that's auto-cast with Heal Other from Lunar Spellbook, allowing your allies to just focus on dealing damage instead of having tick loss to eat food. An Orb of Strike could be something like a concentration item that provides an AoE boost to damage, so all allies around you will get enough damage. So like, let's say that you are the weakest member of the team, everyone else on your team has scythes, and you can't really participate. What if you had this Orb of Strike and you boost 5 other players' damage by 20%? Okay, so 5 other players doing 20% more damage. That's basically if they had a 6th player. So you're still getting your, you know, integration, you're still participating, you're still helping. It's just you're helping in a different way. Next is spells. You could have a Mud Shield or a Find Wound spell that could just either apply a +1 flat armor to ally or a -1 flat armor to enemies, making your allies do more damage. Although many special attacks exist right now, there is always potential for expansions in items too. Something like a necklace that could provide a special attack to weapons without one. This could turn maybe all rune weapons get a special attack that does 5% additional damage. This could just be a way to teach new players how the special attack bar works. I don't know if maybe you've ever seen the Mad Season show YouTube, but he didn't find out about special attacks until like a year and a half in, and this could be one tool to teach new players about them. There's also gear that could increase your max special attack by 10% per piece. I kind of ripped this straight from Sebe. He was mentioning it in one of his videos, and I was like, yeah, that's not a bad idea. So I added it to my little PowerPoint that I was putting together here. A battering ram. This could be a 2-person spec weapon. Maybe 2 people have to click on the battering, one person's using it, but 2 people have to be using it in order to actually function with it. And what it would do is you would charge at an enemy, either draining 40% defense or like dealing additional damage, and it would deal bonus damage for how many tiles that you've run. And then finally, we don't have a magic spec weapon. Maybe I'm a little greedy here, but I think we need a magic spec weapon. Something that, in this case, I suggested it summons a wave that pushes enemies back at least 2 tiles. This could be used on something like Callisto or Whisperer, and then it also does 10% of the opponent's missing HP. So this means if they had like 1,000 HP and you got them to 508 health, they would take 50 damage. If you got them to 8 or 200 health, they would take 80 damage, something like that. So here are my suggestions, just real quick. I have the Siren's Tome. You can see that it's releasing these waves. In this, I have it set to 15%, but with a cap of 80 damage. And then I have a picture of the battering ram, where 2 people are using the ram at the same time to charge at an enemy. With the sailing suggestion, there was also the suggestion of taming. Currently, only mount that you can have in the game is the stunted demonic gorilla that you can ride on when you're using the Zuck transmog, or the Kruk transmog, excuse me. This concept could be expanded for like an individual boss fight where you battle them while you're on a mount of some sort. You might also be able to use this for better travel around the world. Something like a dolphin boat where it's the same size as a raft, but as fast as Rosewood, large boat, but it can only be used for travel, not for any tasks or for, charting or anything like that. The magic carpet, there was some talk during the Raids 3 proposal where people wanted to get a magic carpet that provided them 3 tiles of movement speed when out of combat, and I think that it could be really cool. Maybe there could be some sort of negative, like if you're out of run energy, you just stop completely. And then finally, a sunlight antelope. I think we've all ran around Southern Varlamore after this leagues, and even with full run energy, it is a pain. Maybe they could do something where they add sunlight antelope to let us traverse the Southern Varlamore savanna a bit quicker. Currently, the only typeless damage attacks that the player can use are the Ancient Godsword special attack and the Dragonfire Shield special attack. I just want to suggest a couple more. So we could have a Shade's Dirk. This could be an offhand weapon that converts 5% of the damage you do into typeless damage. There could be, so that means it would roll on its own from 1 to whatever. It wouldn't be rolling against the opponent's defense once the accuracy was rolled. Sleep's Veil. This could be a new headgear which turns zeros into a typeless 1. The Totem of Zao Tak could be a 3-piece item similar to the dwarf multi-cannon that you put on the ground and emits typeless damage, and this could affect you and your just everything. Anything in the area just takes damage near this. And then a shadow sword, the one we get from Curse of the Empty Lord, could do an additional 1 to 3 typeless damage per hit. I mean, it's useless right now. Why not? You know, really, why not? I've already suggested stacking poison and burn, but I think there's also a few more ways you could integrate OnHitEffects. Something like Slayer's Stiletto could be a magical blade which increases in power and abilities as you slay monsters on a Slayer task, which means you could do something like the Fangs of the Hound echo item from League 6, where every X number of attacks you release a fire blast or a water blast, an elemental blast based on their weakness. There could be a Cloud Giant's Ballista, which could be a reward from Barlamore Part 4 when you get to the floating city. This could deal max HP damage per every 3 hits, which is different than the Ruby Bolt, because Ruby Bolt does current HP % damage every 3 hits. This could do max HP % damage and be a consistent way to do it instead of the random Ruby, which means we could balance it much easier. The Strange Wood Branch could be something that just increases damage and accuracy per % missing HP. This could be an offhand that you just hold, and it just gives you additional accuracy and damage. Similar to the Raids 3 original rewards blog for the Missouri armor. Then I think there should be a Ruby Crossbow Bolt rework where it's like every 5 hits it does the 20% current HP damage. I mean, it would be a little bit more common to hit than now. Maybe we could nerf the max damage down to around 80 instead of 100, but I think that would be one way to balance it out. You're basically saying every 5 hits I'll guarantee a 80, but those other 4 hits I might hit a 0 those 4 times. So you're risking having a lower DPS. And then finally, I have a Bloody Rondelle suggestion. This would bleed damage for a % of the opponent's current HP, or we could do missing HP, I guess, as well. All right, just 4 more to go. So mutations. Right now, you know, there's werewolves, vampires, all these humanoids, demons that exist in our world, and they can transform. I don't understand why we don't have it's about immersion, right? I'm not talking about I want to be strong. I just want to be able to do it. Why not? You know, you could be bitten by a werewolf, which provides you a transformation which could increase your max HP, but provide claws as a base weapon instead of fists. You could make a demonic pact with Yama, transforming yourself into a real demon, which reduces your max HP but gives you like magic damage on hit. You could drink a lizard man potion similar to a goblin potion, which gives you all the skills and abilities of a lizard man. They're kind of shit, not gonna lie. You could cast a spell of undead, which could turn you into a spirit when you die for a few seconds. Maybe you know you're gonna die on a boss and you want to pick up the loot when you do, kill him because you're gonna double death, and you don't want that shit to just disappear in the instance or something like that. That could be an opportunity to retrieve it. And then also beyond that, this is kind of, maybe I'll make a separate video on this, but about skills. You know, how can we integrate skills better to be more immersive with different archetypes? If you have any skill suggestion archetypes, you know, throw them in the comments. I'd love to read them. But through prayer, you could meet with ghosts and with expertise in different skills, and they could possess you to give you boosts for a temporary amount of time. Maybe this could be an alternative to grinding out the soups or the stews, the spice stews. But this could be just an absurdly high prayer level. Of course, you're not going to have spice stews if you're level 90 prayer, but you might be able to have them have this instead. You're already going to have spice stews if you're at 90 prayer is what I meant to say. I'm not saying I want Benjamin Franklin to join the game, but new lightning spells and magical attacks that could like stun an enemy or increase innate elemental weakness of other attacks could be interesting. It would require a new lightning rune that would be introduced with level 18 rune crafting. This would all be on the standard spell book. And we could have, you know, Zap, something that increases elemental weakness by 10%. So if they're, and this would be multiplicative. So if they have a 50% weakness, it becomes 55%. Increase it by 20%. Instead, it'll be 60% weakness, you know, and those won't stack. Then we could have higher level ones where it's a storm and it summons the lightning cloud, and everywhere in a 24 tile radius you can cast stronger spells like Paralyze, which will delay the opponent's next attack by 3 tick. No longer are you going to be stepping under to make your attacks. You'll just maybe that will be it. You can perma stun a boss by constantly stepping under and then casting Paralyze. It's got an 18 max hit. It's going to take forever to do anything. And what if you miss? You're going to get struck so bad. I think something like this is like a perfect opportunity to teach someone about, you know, stepping under and something like that. And then finally I have Lightning Bolt. This would be a bouncing lightning strike. It could bounce to, much like the Venator bow, it would bounce in a 4 tile radius to our additional enemies. And finally, I have the Tome of Lightning, which would 5% increase that the next attack hit against you will be a 0. And it'll also increase lightning spell damage by 20%, similar to other books. Sunlight and Moonlight spells. So as a reward from some sort of repeatable boss in Varlamore Part 4, you could relieve new magic scrolls, which could give you spells based on Ralos and Renewal that you put into your, your spell book. It would go into the Arceus spellbook, obviously. So you could have a Sunlight spell, which would just be like the Soul Heretic Sunbeams that target on a certain tile. So you're, instead of attacking a character, you select a tile and that tile gets the spell cast. And then there's also Moonlight spells, which could have the same effect, but it irradiates out in a 5x5, and it will still be capped at 9 targets like Ice Barrage. We're not trying to, like I said, this is not supposed to be best in slot. We're not trying to make Ice Barrage weak or worse. We're just trying to add more immersion. There's definitely some Moonlight spell that exists. Why, we're 99 magic. Why can't we fucking learn it? Whatever. And the final suggestion is weather and day and night cycles. Just as a general world building effect, a global skybox with shared weather formations where you could see like a rain cloud traveling across the sky, and that like enhances water spells in the area or something, could be so immersive and cool. Seeing the sun and the skybox in the Blood Moon Rises quest was just so cool, and it would be so nice if I get that people are in different time zones. Maybe someone doesn't want to deal with something at a certain time or something like that. I get it, but surely there could just be like an isolated world where everything stays the same as it is now, and then all the other worlds, everyone else can be having fun, like your Squidward looking down at us while we're all out having fun with our weather controlled world, or also in Varlamore, maybe the day-night cycle could affect the NPCs based on their affiliation with Ralos or Renewal. Maybe some worlds could just, if it's nighttime, Renewal gets stronger. If it's daytime, Ralos gets stronger. That kind of thing. I have some quick honorable mentions. So fishing, woodcutting, and mining all being resource collection skills makes it kind of hard to integrate with combat. And I think that's fine. It should be how it is. That's why I'm saying like maybe skilling needs its own look at archetypes as well. For instance, fishing trawling is so cool because it's literally a new method of fishing. It's not like, and it's immersive too. It's how people really fish. Maybe something like harpoon boating or something like that could come out. I also wish that, for instance, the lamp fishing was better, but you know, I'll get into this in a different video, I think. So, smithing, fletching, and runecrafting, all being primary production skills for melee, range, and magic, are integrated with combat enough. I don't think they really do need any direct integration. They're already pretty tied together. Sailing already has its own unique combat, and it's already missing its own unique identity. So I don't think it needs anything lopped on top. If I made this video a few months ago, while Leechfin was still being pulled, I probably would have said something like, oh, let's get some magic and range type food. And I guess the community voted no, and that's fine. You know, it is what it is. I'm not even saying it would have been a good idea. I want to make that clear. I'm not saying any of these things are perfect ideas, but I think they all have some merit to be looked into to how the game could be evolved in the next 10 years. Not evolution, but small changes which could diversify combat encounters without impacting the core mechanics of the game. And then finally, you know, shamanism or necromancy, these kinds of magic things. I guess necromancy already exists in RuneScape 3, and I don't think we should just copy that over. I think that actually the 3 combat styles, melee, mage, and range, are perfect as is and don't necessarily need to be changed. We also have, you know, ranged and fire poison damage slats, so I think those are also fine as is. And then also, like I just said, shamanism, that was pitched with the sailing as well. They pitched it themselves. I'm not going to make any comments on it. It seemed mostly like upgrading gear and stuff like that, and I wasn't too interested in that. I think that these are the types of upgrades we should be looking at through gear. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, that's about it. That wraps it up. That's just how I'm thinking about different types of archetypes that are just missing from the game that are fun. You know, these are fun ideas. And it would be cool to see how they get implemented in the game. So thank you very much. If you liked the video, please like and leave a comment. If you didn't like it, let me know what you didn't like about it, I guess. But again, this is just something casual. I'm not doing this to make you happy. I'm just doing this to make me happy. So yeah, have a good day. Bye bye.